several refreshes.
That's
I
what I'm
meant
doing. Even when I do my own streams, I literally have people by saying, "Hey guys, are we going live?" And then, all right, never mind, we are going live. Literally have people by saying, "Hey guys, are we going live?" Yep, it says stream will be starting soon with a bunch of clouds in the background.
hmm
Already done my promos, so don't need to be fall behind on that. It's a go.
All right, looks like we are live. Welcome back, everyone. I know it's been like 2 months since I did my last live stream, but I am back from my vacation and better than ever. So, welcome everyone to the 36th episode of Goddess Spotlight with Liaserenityrose. Of course, I'm your host, Leah, and my co-host for today for this Q&A is AndrewHVA. Introduce yourself.
Hello. It's good to be back.
And of course, our guest of honor today is the pop culture dude, aka his real name is Daniel.
Allow me to do my usual catchphrase that I say in my YouTube uploads. Alrighty then, my rule of charms. It is I, Daniel. You may call me the Pop Culture Dude, and today I'm not streaming on my channel for once. I'm streaming on with Leah and Andrew to do my very first ever on this channel. Well, 36 if you want to count as my first Q&A, all dedicated to the stuff I do. If you have questions about my YouTube content, voiceover stuff, or just any fun pop culture related question, or just any improvised question you want, feel free to join the chat and we shall discuss some fun things in the stream right now.
Wonderful. All right. So let's get started with this Q&A, shall we?
Yep, anybody else here from this live stream, anybody on the chats, feel free, one by one.
All right. Here's my first question for you, Daniel. How
Lay
did
one on me.
you how did you like get into like voice acting and content creating? Like what inspired you? Like was there any like specific content creators and voice actors that inspired you to, actually make your own start making your own content?
That is a very good question. Well, let me go back to the very beginning where I was a young little boy when I used to discover YouTube videos. Like, I would say late 2000s, early 2010s, discover like what most people expect viral videos, funny videos, videos based on movies that you like. But let's just go to the specific genres. Some of them are like, if we're talking about the voiceover stuff, when I was younger, I did not know stop motion was a thing on YouTube. And yes, if you're part of the Sonic fandom, yes, I have watched a couple of those Sonic stop motion videos. I've watched Lego stop motion videos as well. And literally in my mind, I'm like, wait, so these are like people using toys and figures. And then when I see fan animations, whether it's CG, hand drawn, or I don't know, with any other style that they have in mind, it's like, that's actually a pretty cool concept. And literally, when I was younger, I think the first comic dubs that I've discovered was no joke was Ultimate Spider-Man comic dubs, and literally I was like 12 years old, but saying, "It would be cool if I actually get to do something like this." And then I say like around the 2020s, I definitely say like before I get to like to the content creator aspect, like the inspiration of voice acting was definitely from all of the VHS Disney movies that I grew up on, and yes, the majority of the classics like The Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and then you get to the Pixar side from Toy Story, Monsters Inc., Cars. And when I was a kid, this is a usually thing I always do. I always rewind the scenes, whether it's on my VHS or on DVD back then. Just go back, and sometimes I add subtitles, like to improve my vocabulary, to speak a little bit more. And then I just quote the lines multiple times. And then when my parents were like introduce their friends or their other family members by saying, wait, how does your son remember the lines? Like, I remember I was watching the first Shrek movie in the back of a car for a family just to entertain these two young little boys, and the parents have their jaw dropped just because by saying, how does this Daniel kid knows the lines? I'm like, easy, because it's not just hyperfixation, it's just homework on my research. But then when I first started content creating, there were like certain YouTubers that I looked up watching. And when it comes to like to the pop cultural aspect of it, got inspired by YouTubers like Act Nerd Comedy, 3C Films, Filmento, basically like movie-centric YouTubers. And for those that are wondering, was Pop Culture Dude like the first channel that I started? Surprisingly not. The first channel that I actually started was back in 2016. It was a Plus channel called Woody and Daffy Duck. And yes, Woody from Toy Story, Daffy Duck from Looney Tunes. And that channel was basically my early beginnings because back then it was during an era where I was into plush content, which, of course, if you're aware of that community, mostly it's Mario themed. There are some Sonic plush YouTubers and some other video game franchises like Five Nights at Freddy's and Minecraft. But for me, I'm like, how can I do like my own content to be different where I can use my voiceover talent, but then I can use my visionary pop culture movie knowledge and decide to convert them into the videos. Like obviously, as a 14-year-old in eighth grade, obviously it wasn't easy to like, not use a vertical phone, just record a video. And then I got my cousin, a couple people that helped me out to like record in a horizontal way, learn how to properly edit so I don't have to use a phone or TV in the background just to play music. So then it does become too lazy in the final shot. So for that channel back then, from the voiceover experience of having the variety of voicing different amount of characters, I feel like that channel was like the birth of not just where I am today with the pop culture dude, but also with the voiceover stuff. But then when I finally take voiceover more seriously than just doing impressions for a plush channel back then, when I created the pop culture dude back in August 2019. So I've been doing YouTube for like, not gonna kid you guys, for almost a decade by now, since January 2016, from that channel to now
Oh.
pop culture dude for where I am right now. So it's been almost 10 years I've been doing this. But then when voiceover come into the way, thanks to, the success of the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie that came out in 2020, of course, as a fan of the actor Jim Carrey, but also as the fan of the Sonic franchise growing up, like the majority of you guys, and the fact that it was a film adaptation. I think after the success of the first film, like, you know what? How about I decide to make my own short little voice impression reel of Sonic characters? And it was like happening April 2020. And I got a lot of DM messages from people who comment on that video, who discovered my social media pages, from Twitter to Discord to everywhere else, by saying, "Oh my gosh, I like Ragman. Oh my gosh, I like this character that you do that." And then ever since 2020, it was like a slow burn to it. And even when I was in high school, I've done theater class, but then COVID became a big deal. I'm like, well, I do like to perform. I definitely want to like, like be part of the entertainment industry. So then voiceover is like the best way that I can go, which I go back to my childhood background, my YouTube background, my inspiration is what got me into voice acting due to the childhood films I grew up with. And then for the past 5 years, I guess you could say since April 2020, still nowadays, still getting auditions, still getting cast for same roles, different roles. And then I literally make a whole YouTube playlist. Like if anybody's interested on my voiceover catalog, boom. That's how I am today from 9 years of being a YouTuber, but also 5 years of voice acting before I am. So there you go. That's the lore dump of my origins as a content creator and a voice actor for my inspirations.
Wow. That's
Wow.
very wow, that's very, very intriguing. The
Yeah.
fact that, like, you got, like, a lot of, like, people were like, "Whoa, how do you memorize these lines from these, like, popular Disney movies?" And like you said, you did it as, like, you did it as, like, for your research, because I think, when it comes to, like, when you first did them, when you were, like, memorizing those specific lines, were you kind of like, "Hmm," it's like, did you try to, like, mimic, like, the emotions for if especially if it's, like, an emotional line or, like,
Oh yeah.
something like, can you give us, like, an example of which line that you, like, memorize and then, like,
Okay,
how you imitated it?
I'm definitely gonna like recite. I'm definitely going back to like old school childhood era. So if I'm gonna go back, I'm just gonna use one prime example, which is a Disney movie that all of you guys love. It's from the original Lion King. So you know the scene where Timon and Pumbaa basically finds Simba lying on the ground, and then basically they both freak out. And if I could recite the scene like now, where if I could do my solid impression of both the characters, it will be like, yeah, Jason's a lion! Run, Pumbaa, move it! Hey, Timon! It's just a little lion! Look at him! He's so cute and all alone! Can we give him Pumbaa? Are you nuts? We're talking about a lion! Lions eat guys like us! But he's so little! He's gonna get bigger. Maybe he'll be on our side! That's the stupidest thing Hey, I get it. What if he's on our side? Maybe having a lion around isn't such a bad idea. So we're keeping him! All right, who's the brain of this operation? My point exactly. Jeez, I'm getting fried. Let's get out of here and find some shade. And the best thing about it is, some people are like, wait, you're not even looking at the clip. You're not looking at the script. You remember that? And the funniest thing is, even not related to voiceover, there's some small details in real life where there's gonna be like some sort of small detail that I know from this person, whether it's online or real life, and they're like, "How do you know this fact about me?" It's like, I don't know. Maybe I just swallowed a computer chip when I was born, when I was, alive into this world. I guess that's just my special superpower, if you can consider that. So that's a prime example that I could showcase.
Wow. Yeah, the fact that you did this without even looking at a clip of it, that's just very phenomenal. Like usually like if I ever want to listen to like specific like clips from like the older Disney movies, I have to like look it up because there's no way I can memorize the lines unless if you watch the movie like a lot, then you can like memorize the lines. But that's really great. Like I love your Timon and Pumbaa impressions, Daniel. Pretty
I honestly
spot
think
on.
it's very underrated, and the reason why I just chose that because I think as a kid, Nathan Lane's voice got like very so glued to it. So when I was a kid, I'd be like, "How does he usually say this line?" And then usually just say that in return, and just be like, "You know what? Maybe I could do that." And I don't know, like if there's like a certain voice of the character, I'm just like, "Yeah, let me just try to mimic of how they say it." And then even when I was a kid, I look up the DVDs and behind the scenes by saying, okay, so that's how this actor must sound like in real life, and just try to mimic it like in the way, and then just research all the other stuff. And also, another than that, it's like literally another reason why like I think there's a possible reason why I do remember the scene because the key word is passion. If it's like if I'm very passionate, I like loving this movie both in and out, not just from what I've seen, but just knowing like the history of it, the lore about it, the behind the scenes filmmaking aspects of it. I'm like, yeah, just watch it on repeat multiple times, and then boom, it's stuck in my brain.
Wow. The Because like the Lion King, the Lion King is like so memorable. Like I think the most memorable thing from The Lion King for me was literally like when Timon is like, was it what do you want me to do? Just and
Dude, try
drag
to
and do the
drag it through
whole
the hula.
and
I know
then
exactly what you're talking about.
it's like the most hilarious and randomest scene ever in that movie because it's
Oh,
supposed
he's a
to
big pig. You give me a big pig too. Oi!
and then the fact that they just they scream and then they just start running, I'm just like, that's the most hilarious like distraction I've ever seen. But it
And it's
was
full funny that like you want to have actually extend that scene where Pumbaa decide to pass gas and the hyenas run away just for continuity purposes.
yeah. Wow, it's just great that you have like a talent like that, because that's a pretty useful skill to have, especially if you're going into voice acting, you know. It's a special gift that you have, Daniel, and that's something that I applaud you for because that's amazing. Because there's no way I would be able to if it's like a meme, like if it's like a scene that you can see as like a meme, those are the lines that I could definitely remember. But like even like the specific scenes, the scene that you mimicked, with Timon and Pumbaa, I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember the dialogue in that scene. So it's definitely a gift that you have.
It is no script, or in this case, like I feel like whenever I watch those scenes and recite the scenes, I definitely say it definitely help with a lot of improvisation. Like literally not too long ago, and this is pretty recent. I was cast to voice Jim Carrey's Dr. Ivan Robotnik for a CG Sonic 4 fan film that they're currently producing right now. And throughout the moments, like I feel like from that example I just pointed out for like resigning the lines from Lion King and then just doing that, it's like not just to take notes from what the actor behind this character has done. It just leaves like so much creative freedom, like so much improvised dialogue, which I kid you not, it probably took like 3 hours 3 4 hours at the bare minimum of recording, and there's a lot of unscripted moments. But I asked the directors, or at least like the people behind the productions, like like have full consent about it. But after that, I was like, you know what? This is like, they have the script ready. There's the blueprint. What's something else I could add to this character? Whether it's like, a funny joke I could think of, or at least an insight reference I could put that diehard fans would know, and then converge it into one. And then literally when I listen to these long audio files, no matter if it's split to 8 minutes and convert to like a 30-minute file, it's like, geez, this was me for like 4 hours of sweating through all my lungs and throat vocals and all this. It's like, wow, sometimes I even impress myself for that dedication and commitment. Like, I didn't have to do it, but I choose to either way.
Mhm. Absolutely. And Kenny actually put in the chat, it's photographic memory that you have.
Mm,
Um and that is a peak talent, like if you have like photographic memory like that, and you can use that to your advantage, and especially in the voice acting industry,
mhm,
where like
Mm.
sometimes, like, in case if you need to, like, in case if like the voice director's like telling you, hey, can you do it this way or something, or and stuff, or sometimes they may forget where they stopped and they're like, oh, we stopped at this line, so it's definitely a useful skill, you know and everything. But all right, Andrew, do you have a question for Daniel?
mhm.
Uh, yeah, so speaking of impressions, what are some of your favorite impressions to do besides Timon and Pumbaa?
I mean,
Ooh.
I don't think it's gonna be too much of a surprise for anyone that basically follows my page. So yes, my number one favorite impression is just like not just his iteration of Eggman, just doing any impression of Jim Carrey, no matter if it's Ace Ventura, The Mask, The Grinch, no matter which I literally cosplay as his roles, but also do it at the same time, which it's not an easy task to do where you have to do it vocally and physically. But if I had to do one prime example, if you guys have to request one Jim Carrey movie of mine, just say any movie that you will consider, and then I'll just think of like the lines I could think of. You can just name any movie of mine. Anybody here in this chat or anyone.
Oh,
Oh.
any movie.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go with The Mask.
Okay, The Mask. So let me just go off. What's one iconic line that I could think of? Either smoking or I got one. Step right up here, don't be shy. Nobody likes a leatherhead. Move it. First, I got something for you, son. We have a giraffe. There you go, son. Now get out of here. You're bothering. No, sorry, wrong pocket. For you, son, a French poodle. Sorry, son. The dog was rabbit. You have to put it down. Now, last but not least, my favorite. And then breaks a gun, water balloon, make a balloon out of a Tommy gun, a Tommy gun, bang, 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 bang. Then after that, crime thugs leave the alley streets. This is incredible. With these powers, I could be a superhero. I can fight crime, protect the innocent, work for world peace. But first, go to the auto shop, mess with the mechanics. Hold on to your lug nuts. It's time for an overhaul. Thank you. You love me. You really love me. You were good, kid. Real good. As long as I'm around, you always be checking back, see? And by the way, fun fact, The Mask is the main reason why I became a Jim Carrey fan in the first place. So if it weren't for that film, I wouldn't be a fan of the actor, but also take inspiration. So thank you for choosing The Mask, Andrew. Easily my
Mm.
favorite.
You're welcome.
Wow.
Woo!
That
Somebody stop me!
like, I love the way Jim Carrey, like he acted so passionately in that movie. Like, he gave the characters so much personality once he put that mask on. It's like it's so like, I just love the wackiness in that movie too. Like especially, I think, like, especially that dance scene that he did with Cameron Diaz, because I heard
Hmm.
that took a long time to master that, I think, from what I've heard, for behind the scenes for that dance scene they did together. But that's really cool, that because to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, Jim Carrey's in the chat. Like, it
Hmm.
literally sounds like Jim Carrey. I was like, oh my gosh.
It's fun. It's funny because some people literally call me Jim Carrey Jr. when I used to rehearse for theater class by saying, "Don't worry, we got ourselves an affordable Jim Carrey here on the stage." It's like, yeah, it's exactly like my in living color face, if you dare say. And when you mention about the mask, I mean, it's like what I said before. Like the reason why I got so drawn into that movie, which, funny enough, it wasn't the first Jim Carrey movie I saw when I was a kid. The first one, surprisingly, was Bruce Almighty, and then the second one I saw was Horn Hears a Who, which Steve Carell was in both movies, and I saw it when I was in kindergarten. And then I saw Ace Ventura 2. I didn't see the first one until like I watched it on television, but then when I saw The Mask, where he has this cartoonish version of Jekyll and Hyde, where he plays Mr. Nice Guy Stanley Ipkiss that gets walked on by so many people around him, including his colleagues and even women that he has feelings for. But then when he puts on this green mask, like becoming like this living Looney Tunes character, that became so inspirational for me by saying, if he can play both roles, but also have zero shame, have full confidence, have full charisma, and having like it doesn't matter if he's over the top. It's like very energetic, so extravagant, just being so unpredictable. That's what truly draws. And when you mentioned about the iconic dance scene from Hey Pachuco, yeah, I mean, it was literally during the same time where both Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz were not really that well known to the world, while Jim Carrey was mostly known
Yeah.
as the funny guy in The Living Color. Ace Ventura wasn't
Mhm.
out yet when they were filming production. Cameron Diaz was not an actress previously, but that's when they start that role, and that movie helped break out their careers even more than before. And the best thing about that movie is the Q and Pete sequence, which I remember the producers were like, "This scene is too ridiculous. We should cut this off for the scene." But once when they test screen it to audiences, bada bing, bada boom, they kept it in the final cut, and it's still like one of the most entertaining scenes and one of the reasons why I love that movie because even though at the core it's a comedy based on a very dark comic book, if you look back to the source material, but the script changed due to Jim Carrey's involvement, which honestly it made the movie a lot better in my opinion. It just has that
Mhm.
perfect balance of not just fun, wacky comedy, but also this very detective 40s, 60s action crime noir movie, but it's a very jazz sensation too, which I feel like the jazz music is really good for what it was back in 1994. The romance chemistry between Jim and Karen was really nice and thoughtful. And believe it or not, that movie became another reason why I wanted to have a dog because the Jack Terry Russell Milo in that film became like an inspiration where I literally named one of my future pups Milo, named after the film. And then after that, when I see Jim Carrey interacting with dogs, whether it's Ace Ventura 1, The Mask, and The Grinch, I literally tell my parents, Mom, Dad, can I have a dog now? Because I know that Jim Carrey in real life is a dog person. And when I saw that dog in The Mask by saying, yeah, I definitely need a man's best friend after that. So if it, I'm just saying, like, if it weren't for The Mask, I wouldn't be like not just a fan of the actor himself, but I literally use monologues and I literally use Cuban Pete like one audition for a musical theater performance. And the production that it was based on the Adam Sandler Drew Barry movie, The Wedding Singer. And surprisingly, a monologue from The Mask actually won to have like a fun ensemble led role where I play a homeless guy with Adam Sandler's character during the song where they're singing about being single. So that movie is very influential in my life for the past 31 years as we speak.
Wow. Yeah, like because it's just crazy because from what I've heard, Jim Carrey, he actually doesn't do sequels, but
Hmm.
what's ironic is that he actually made an exception for like the Sonic movies, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's because of the script though, because I think Jim Carrey said if the script like intrigues him, then
It's
he's
written
more
in
than
gold ink.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
gold.
because, like, if you notice the movies that he stars in, they don't have sequels except the Sonic movie, which is
Except
like
for Ace Ventura 2 and Dumb and Dumber 2 be the only
mhm,
exceptions before Sonic the Hedgehog.
so it's like
Trust me.
be because, like, Jim Carrey literally mentions he doesn't do sequels, and it's like, it's an interesting, like, thing, and then he's like he got intrigued by, like, the sequels for, like, the Sonic movies, and then now he's like, "Oh, this is so much fun to do," and I'm like I think it's because, as long as the script is intriguing to him, at least he's like, "Okay," it's like, "This sounds intriguing." I'll I'll definitely, like, so but that's
I was
really
gonna say
cool.
I was gonna comment on that because trust me, I know my Jim Carrey lore, so I'm gonna get to the real explanation. Which the one thing that you're right about is number one, you're correct about the script. So I know back in the past, Carrey's not a sequel guy. As much as I love Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, that's a nostalgic, guilty pleasure comedy film. But I'm aware of the behind the scenes that that sequel technically burned him out. That he doesn't like rinse repeating roles, which now honestly broke my heart when I was a kid because they were supposed to make a sequel to The Mask back in summer of '96, but due to the production of Ace Ventura 2, that unfortunately did not happen. Which, yeah, if you know the history about the original Mask 2, it was literally a Super Nintendo giveaway. If someone actually wins a Nintendo console back in the mid '90s, they actually would have been like an extra of that Cancel Mask sequel. But when Jim worked on Ace Ventura 2, that eventually just burned it out. And then I think the the winner of that contest got like $4,000 or $5,000 rather than just appearing in a cancel sequel, which I thought that was pretty funny. But then, of course, over the years, Jem definitely doesn't want to rinse and repeat roles for like over 20 years until a sequel to Dumb and Dumber has happened due to the fans and the filmmakers staying in touch. But then when that film critically flawed, but also was critically panned by critics and audiences, And then when Jim sort of like took a nosedive in his career, but then enters Sonic the Hedgehog, the least expected film franchise, or in this case, a franchise that all of us grew up on. And even when I was younger, if someone would have told me in the past, "Hey Daniel, your favorite actor is going to be playing Dr. Ivan Robotnik, aka Dr. Eggman, for like 3 Sonic movies with Keanu Reeves and Idris Elba," and I'll be like, "You're crazy. That's never going to happen." Well, spoke too soon. It happened in the 2020s, and I feel like as a fan of the actor, the two things that really surprised me. Number one, it's such a great love letter to his classic earlier 90s roles because I feel like for anyone who's grown up with the movies, it's like, I remember seeing this type of performance I see in Ace Ventura or The Mask or Dumb and Dumber or The Grinch. But then kids that don't know much about Jim Carrey at all, that's kind of like a reintroduction to the franchise, just like how the Sonic franchise was kind of reintroducing itself to new fans. So I feel like as a fan of both, it felt like it was the best of both worlds. But then when he was ready to be part of like Sonic sequels, which is unbelievable because he's been doing
Mhm.
this for like over 40 years since the 80s of his career. And what's so unbelievable is like, wait, his first and only trilogy in his career that he has never done before. And what you said about earlier by saying, yeah, number one is the script. Number two, I think you mentioned like in a Sonic 2 interview for what makes this character so intriguing is he's not a character that stays the same, looks the same, or
Yeah.
has the same modes. He
Mhm.
has different growth. Like Jim trained his mind by saying he wants to join a franchisable character, which that was interesting. Like, really? You're open to do franchises now? But the only condition is like it's a character that morphs, grows, evolves to his evolution. And for
Mhm.
what Jeff Fowler and the filmmakers have done to like, try to bring in new refreshing ideas, but then Jim actually sees the value of the franchise. Like he knew the existence of Sonic, but he didn't understand like how much of a impact it has done. But then when I watch interviews for like all 3 of his movies, I've never seen an actor that would be so introspective, so three-dimensional by being super adept based on a video game villain and actually branch him
Mhm.
out to like, oh, his trauma of being an orphan. Why is he so
Mhm.
egotistical? Why is he preferring
Mhm.
machines over humans? What's his personal
Mhm.
vendetta between
Yeah.
the hedgehog and his friends? And throughout all 3 movies, from not just from Jim's enjoyment, which you can easily tell he's having a good time on set, but just seeing how the
Mhm.
way that his character is written, betrayed, and act by saying, all right, now I can understand why he would like say yes to the trilogy. And then rumors has it, fingers crossed, surprisingly or probably not surprisingly, he may or may not have spoken a word that he could be open back for another Sonic movie. And I'm like, Jim, this is not what you usually do. You're breaking your own sequel curse. But yet this
Mhm.
franchise and the filmmakers behind it makes you say, I love this world. I love this universe. I don't
Mhm.
mind coming back as long as you give me new refreshing ideas that feels like it's a
Mhm.
purpose for the character to grow. So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess that's like the best explanation why he locked into those movies for all 3 films.
Yeah, because we can see like Ivo's like evolution through the films, like especially like it hits even harder in the third film,
Oh,
because
100%.
obviously like Ivo's like as we know he grew up as an orphan. He didn't have any family. That's why he turned out the way he did. And then he finds out, wait, and then, like, Gerald just comes back into his life and says, "I'm your grandfather,"
Harold Robotnik.
and then he's like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "I have a grandfather?" And it's like
And who
and
would
then
love with whom?
yeah, and then, and the fact is that, just seeing that, like but what I like is that Jim Carrey brings, like, this specific, like, charisma to the character, and he has like these, that especially that emotional moment with Agent Stone, near the end of the film. And it's like
Mhm.
it hits even more because
I will
like
be honest. I will be honest with you. When I went to see the movie in premiere day, I was literally in my Robotnik cosplay based on his fat look, and I literally have a friend in real life that kind of reminds me of Agent Stone. When I was watching that scene alone, not only it 100% gave me Truman Show vibes, like literally having his closure, saying goodbye to the world on live television by saying, "Jim, you're just bringing your Truman Show performance, and you're making me cry because of that." And as we're mentioning about this, like I feel like the beauty of his performances, I feel like not a lot of people talk about between the contrast between his performance as Ivo and Gerald. Like literally during the moment where Gerald wants to have revenge against the world after what Gunn has done to Maria. And during the moment where it was so unbelievable that these actors, like these characters, are played by the same actor, where you see as Ivo, he was so vulnerable by saying, "We have each other, we're family," and then as Gerald, "Oh, Ivo, you're no Maria." Like seeing like on Jim as Ivo, heartbroken, but then with Gerald on the other hand, so bitter and angry, where he's like having rage against humanity. So I'm burning it all down in my mind by saying, the acting from Jim. And then when it gets to the closure with Agent Stone, like I said, not only Truman Show vibes, but literally the ending where he literally tells Stone, "You're the one and only one who ever cares about me," by saying, "That's right." Like, even though he treats Stone like a punching bag, but Stone shows so much loyalty and dedication, literally go through sweat, blood, and tears to make sure if the doctor's okay. And then the
Mhm.
heartwarming closure, which I know in interviews, Lee Mashtube felt emotional when he was filming those scenes. So I'm like, well, I respect the dedication, Lee. And literally
Mhm.
from Ivo's final words of saying, "You're more than a sycophant to me. You were a sickle friend." And when I was watching the theater, I was literally hugging my real life age self, saying, "You're my sickle friend. You've helped me through my ups and downs." And then, nostalgic tears went down when he says this iconic line from the first film, "Oh, Mr. Latte with sea moss or goat milk." And my mind, I was literally whispered by saying, "Jim, please don't make me cry. Please don't make me cry just like you made me cry for Truman Show." And then when he says, "I love the way you make them," it's like, okay, I get it now. I get why Jim mentions like the script should be written in gold ink. That is not just a pure character development between Stone and Ivo throughout that moment. Like that's such a beautiful arc if you look from the first film where Stone was like the
Mhm.
only person that could tolerate his IQ, he's egotistical in his attitude, and the fact that he may treat Stone dirty throughout all three movies, but he's always been there for him when nobody else does, not even his own grandfather. And I feel like not only that's emotional, but once again, it's a great character growth until he makes that sacrifice at the end. So it was great acting from Jim in both those roles, along with Lee at the very end as Agent Stone.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah. Oh, okay. I see a question in the chat by Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hi,
Um, his,
Kevin.
his question is, my question is, what was the inspiration for your Storm voice?
I
Ooh.
had a feeling somebody was gonna ask me that. So first of all, I wasn't expecting to be cast as Storm for Sonic Revolution, which I have voiced Storm before in a comic dub, and dare I say for someone's plush content just for a while. But for the inspiration of the voice, so of course, Dan Green and Travis Willingham has actually done their own take about it. And the funniest thing is, even though my direction for Storm is definitely a lot more humorous than compared to how he usually would act, I think the basic question I can think of is Patrick Star from SpongeBob SquarePants. I think there's even one moment where I voice recorded Storm for a separate project where I actually accidentally uttered like it sounded a little bit more like Patrick, where it sounded more like this by saying, "Wait, what you do? I did not do nothing wrong. This is happening to me." I'm like, oh crap, that sounded more like Patrick. So I'm like, you know what? I feel like with the tone and the type of jokes for Storm. Usually, in the lore, he's not usually the smartest of the brains. It's usually Wade that's mostly the brains, while Jet is more like the cocky, egotistical leader that he is, while Storm's basically like, a big guy that's, trying to get along with the team, but usually his brain's not right in the right place. So
Mhm.
usually I would say Patrick Star is like the inspiration I can think of for this character. So I don't know. That's like the best way I could approach it when I do it on Revo, but also for separate projects, the voice of Storm.
Patrick Star, that's so funny.
It'll be so funny just to see Storm recite by saying, "Hey, Jet, is mayonnaise an instrument?" I can imagine that.
That's so the because, like, now that I think about it, it's like some I can hear very similarities between Storm and Patrick Star, so I can definitely see why that the inspiration kinda sounds like it's from, like it sounds very similar to Patrick Star from SpongeBob.
And it honestly works for the unpredictable, low IQ, no nonsense type of humor, which I know back then. If I can recall one of my favorite jokes that I did during a revel when Andrew asked True Blue, who's voicing Jet, and saying like, "Oh, Babylon Rose, start singing," but then True Blue was voicing Jet singing Frank Sinatra's My Wave, and then I just ad lib something by saying, I think my testosterone has gotten better when it comes to that. I feel like a new bird again. And once again, it just went so off guard, but I just feel like it just fits in the style of something that Patrick that would say rambly out of nowhere, the inner machinations of my mind are an enigma. And it's like, wait, what? And then you just somewhat just unexpectedly laugh at it. Just that unpredictability.
Wow. I like it too, because it's like it's your own take on the character, like you're kind of putting like like the way you portray Storm is more like unpredictability that something unexpected could happen. And I like that.
hmm And yeah, that's one thing. It's like obviously when you're playing the characters that's like pre-existing, of course you want to be faithful for like what fans know, so then you're not alienated by saying like, "Hey, that's not what Storm's like." But at the exact same time, just like for any voiceover artist for any pre-existing character that's so beloved to like many fans, it's like, yeah, how if I put my own spice, my own humor, my own taste to it, and then there you go. You'd be like, "All right, you're worthy enough to be in the Storm." And yes, Kevin, I'm reading your comment right now. I love your Storm. Makes you laugh every single time. I don't know which one it was, but I think it was like maybe back in 2023 where there was like a moment where Infinite was getting ticked off from Storm in a way. And there's some moments where my Discord was cutting off on purpose, which I didn't intend to. But then whoever was voicing Infinite in that call, and then just everybody was saying, "Oh, it's stuck in a loophole. I'm doing brave." Then just, try to be like it's in the scenario where it actually fits. So then it does become too awkward. So I just feel like, Kevin, if that's like one of the examples, then I had a feeling that you will be amused from that.
Nice. All right, here's my next question for you, Daniel. What got you into the Sonic franchise? I'm very
What
curious.
got You know what? That's honestly a really good question. So, of course, I mentioned like earlier that yes, I've been a longtime Sonic fan since maybe 2006, 2007. See what I did there with 2006? Which, yeah, believe it or not, Sonic 06 was literally the first Sonic game I played. I know it's notorious. I am aware of the controversy, which trust me, yes, rush development, glitchy game, but it was my introduction knowing who the Blue Road it was. It was like on my own tools Xbox 360, and around that time it was like high definition quality. And then I got introduced to the characters from Sonic to Shadow to Silver. But then around that same era, we got the early rise of the Mario and Sonic Olympic Games crossover, which of course I was born in 2001, so I wasn't aware of like the whole Nintendo versus Sega rivals things, which obviously that was Sega's intention to create Sonic to make something a little more cool, more adolescent, but definitely more hip and not too happy, joy with Mario by comparison. So after discovering '06, and I'm like, wait, that's the same character I played for my uncle's Xbox game. And then I realized they did like multiple Olympic games. I remember when I was a kid, I saw a commercial, and I'm pretty sure you diehard Sonic fans might know this. There's this one iconic Sonic Unleashed commercial where there's this gamer playing the daytime scenes, and then when he turns to the werehog, the boy turns into a werewolf and try to chase his pet or something. I think it was like a dog or a cat, but that's what I remember by saying, wait, Sonic's a werewolf? That's honestly pretty interesting. But then it got to like, I would say definitely the 2010s era, which, Colors exist and Sonic Generations, which I will say when I was younger, Generations was like the most Sonic game that I played. And I feel like if it weren't for the 2011 game, I probably would not understand the lore. Like I knew the characters, I knew like the existence of why it's so popular, but it got me understanding to like from the character bios, the concept art by saying, ah, so that's what the music tracks sound like. So then I don't have to use YouTube. Sega themselves actually import those music tracks in the game if you play the levels. And around that time, I was discovering more Sonic content, which, yes, for any diehard Sonic fans, yes, I watched Sonic Paradox from all the volume shorts. And yes, some jokes are not kid friendly, but then when I got older, I'm like, oh, so that's what they mean from that side of the fandom. And then outside of Paradox, I watched some popular Sonic AMVs. I did see the Numa Yay with Sonic and Shadow. Do you like waffles from the Sonic X AMVs? And yes, Sonic X was technically like the first Sonic TV show that got me like hooked to binge to a Sonic show. And then around that time, I did watch Sonic Underground, Sat AM, Adventure Sonic the Hedgehog when it was streaming on Netflix around that time. So I'm like, well, at least I'm caught up with like, the first half of the Sonic media. And then around 2011, the jump began to 2012, which 2012 was a great year to be a kid when Sonic the Hedgehog had his first cinematic debut in Wreck-It Ralph from that one cameo of, if you don't die, you won't regenerate ever, game over. And around that same time, Sonic Sega All Star Racing's Transform existed, and Wreck-It Ralph was in that game. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I get to see Sonic in a movie when I was younger, where I was turning 11 in fifth grade. And then I think from early 2010, I had a roommate that was like into Sonic around that time, and I feel like we just got into the franchise for a lot of things. And then, of course, obviously, I got more to like the other Sonic media from even the Archie comics, where I actually read the Mega Man crossover comics around that time. And then Sonic Boom happened, where I actually watched the TV show, which I'm like, wow, this is basically like Seinfeld meets the Looney Tunes show, but with Sonic characters. I like the style of humor. And then, even though, yes, the fandom definitely has their ups and downs, but I will say this, like, even though I think I sort of took a break from the franchise until Mania came out, but then when the movie hype was going on, even with the original design and the fact that you mentioned Jim Carrey's actually in the movie, that's where it just blows my mind by saying, holy crap, they're actually making a movie franchise based on a favorite actor and also a video game franchise that I grew up on. And then boom, like I feel like the movie franchise later on, like even though '06, the earlier Olympic Games, Unleashed, Generations, and the YouTube content that I've watched for Paradox, stop motion videos, short films, AMVs, just got me like hooked to the franchise. But then where we are right now with Paramount's like movie iterations and then the remaster of Sonic X Shadow Generations, I'm like, well, this was the game that got me into the lore of the franchise and then makes me got into the fandom that just like, only to myself or at least like only close friends at school. But then, like in the year 2020, when the first Sonic movie came out, bada bing, bada boom, I decided to become noticeable in the fandom, in the community. Not only just hey, you're the Jim Carrey fanboy or the Sonic fan, but then when we get to the voiceover stuff and the content stuff, by saying, I was not expecting to be in this franchise, or in this case, this fandom that will like need me in a way. And I can't believe I'm saying this. This is gonna sound a lot coming from me. This blue hedgehog can save your life and change your life forever, dare I say. And I'm not the only one. Like I could say the
Mhm.
same for like everyone else, but it's like, man, this franchise helped me to like, build content more, get voiceover, create new friends. Dare I say found love at some point. But other than that, it's like, man, what a legacy that this franchise has done. Obviously, for like many fans, whether you grew up in the 90s, or the 2000s, or you're one of those new fans in this decade that becomes, it's like, it's very multi-generational, just like other franchises could find their ways to reinvent themselves to bring longtime fans and new fans together. So I'm just gonna say this: if it weren't for '06, and if it weren't for Generations, and if it weren't for the movie franchise nowadays, I probably wouldn't be this active or this well known to the community. But like I said, a blue hedgehog can save your life forever.
That's absolutely true, yeah. This blue hedgehog, it like really has made it has really it is really like multi-generational. Like you got the older fans who grew up with the 90s, games and the 90s cartoons, and then you get like the 2000s, the fans who grew up more on the 2000s, media, and then you have the 2010s and then now 2020s, and then it's like it is a very multi-generational franchise that, you know, like it brings a lot of people together, and I think that's what makes the Sonic franchise so intriguing, like, because, I grew up more on, like, Super Mario, so I didn't really
Mm,
know about Sonic, until I watched Sonic X, and I kinda grew up with Sonic more in the, like, 2000s, so because of that show, I was like, "Oh, okay," it introduced me to the character archetypes. I was like, "Okay, we have, like, the hero who is obviously very cocky and likes to, mess with the villain," and
mm.
then, of course, we get Knuckles. For some strange reason, Sonic X decided to, like, portray him as, like, very short, like, a hot-tempered more than usual.
He's a red
Yeah,
guy. He has to be that. It's his code.
yeah, and like I said, that show really introduced like the different character archetypes where I'm like, oh, okay, I get what archetype they're representing. So it's definitely very, very cool that like um because of those specific medias that you mentioned in the Slime franchise, you're like, I wouldn't be here today. It's like, yeah, like the Slime franchise really changed a lot of lives.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely agree on that. All right,
One thing I
Andrew.
will agree.
Oh,
I was
sorry,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
the I was gonna say the one thing I agree with you on, I forgot to mention this, but now you reminded me. Yeah, I did knew who Mario was first because Mario's like either one of or at least your first video game franchise that you got introduced with. And I feel like when I was younger, I had the GameCube, which that was my first console that introduced me to gaming. And the first games I played was Mario Kart Double Dash and Super Mario Party 6, but I did not know the existence of Sonic until '06 happened. Just like for you, you didn't know like Sonic was like a big thing until like you decided to watch Sonic X. So basically, I have to agree with Cookie Star's comment by saying thank you, Mario, for giving us Sonic. Not just literally because that's what Sega intended for Nintendo, but how metaphorical for fans like us that knew Mario first, but
Mhm.
then later us got into Sonic next later on.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely true. All right,
Yeah.
Andrew, do you have another question for Daniel?
Yes. Let me think. Yeah. What's one of your biggest like achievements or highlights? Is there anything that's like made you super excited, you're so proud of, or
I'm gonna be very honest with you. Like, basically, when I either get spotlighted by celebrity, whether it's on social media, I'm pretty sure you guys can relate to this because you guys been to cons many times before, which obviously for me, I definitely tag along with that. I would say the first one, social media wise, it's on my pin Twitter, like getting noticed by the real Jim Carrey before he deleted social media, unfortunately. Like during when the first movie came out, where I was recreating the where Evil Grows dance sequence, which around that time I knew the history that he chose the song himself because it was a popular 70s Canadian band, but also the headless move was inspired by Dick Van Dyke for the Dick Van Dyke Show. And to me, I'm like, well, if he took inspiration from his heroes back then, and I took inspiration from him. And then when he used to have social media, I remember I was like 18 around the time, and not gonna lie, I was just shedding a tear because I'm like, I was now expected to like get spotlighted from this man that I grew up throughout my childhood, and then basically in my brain, I'm like, man, if it weren't for the first Sonic movie, or at least expressing my thoughts, like, my passion for this man, I probably would have not get noticed. But then I decided to pin that on my Twitter page forever for the rest of my life. So then that's never forgotten. But as we're talking about in real life, I mean, the only conventions I've ever been to since I've been in Florida throughout my life is the fact that I've been to MegCon Orlando many times before. I feel like the biggest achievement is when I get to meet film directors. Yeah, like the first filmmaker that I met was director Sam Raimi. But if you're a Spider-Man fan, he directed the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy, which I talked to him for like maybe 2, 3 minutes for like a 2 hour wait time for like spending $300 to sign autographs to sign the first three Spider-Man DVDs. He was a very nice guy. Talked to him about the impact of No Way Home, of Toby Spidey, but as well as like, hey, if you would have hypothetically write your fourth Spider-Man film, if it's after No Way Home or before No Way Home, how would you want to take it off? And then he gives off his hypothetical ideal pitch, and then he likes the line where I said, "Don't forget, Sam, a great power comes great responsibility." I'd be like, man, this is like a film director that makes fan favorite superhero movies, which that was the franchise, or in this case, that was the movie iteration of Spider-Man that got me into not just Spider-Man, but just superheroes in general for both Marvel and DC. If it weren't for that man's vision for those movies, and then after Sam Raimi, I actually got the chance to like meet fellow voice actors. Like I actually get to meet Roger Craig Smith for the very first time back in last February of 2024, and we were like the last people to like wait in line. And I know fans like my Eggman impression, most specifically the Mike Pollock voice, but Roger was so kind, and he was aware that he knows the voice is very loud. And I'm like, yeah, I've done it before, so I'm fully aware. We've done it in the back, and we ad lib it in improv, like a little bit of Sonic and Eggman banter. I like that Roger, usually with his sense of humor, he's like, "Look out, Mike! He's starting to steal for your job." And it's like, "Yeah, go ahead and pay the bills, Mike." And literally, we just kind of like bounce off a little bit with the jokes. I'm like, he was such a cool guy. And then aside from Roger Craig Smith, it was pretty cool that I met two other voice actors. I met Yuri Lowenthal, who voiced Peter Parker slash Spider-Man in the recent video games run for both PlayStation 5 and any recent Marvel game that he's done. And the best thing about it is I told him by saying, I discovered your voice from the Disney Infinity games where you were the toy box narrator and the fact that you voiced the Spider-Man character in mobile games. And I knew that before the Sonic games. And he was impressed by my little like research knowledge that I've done, and he was impressed by it. And he definitely compliments like my cousin was like dressed up as Sasuke from Naruto because I know that's a character he voices in that show, and I dressed up in Spider-Man outfits. And then the third voice actor I met around that same day was Adam MacArthur, which obviously anime fans will know him from Jujutsu Kaisen, but back then I knew him as Marco Diaz from Disney XD Star vs. the Force of Evil. So I cosplay as Marco, and literally I recorded a video where I did the impression in front of him and did the cosplay in front of him by saying like, "Hey yo, man, there's a lot of Disney characters that people could see themselves as Aladdin, Flynn Rider, or Hercules, but I'm like, I kind of see like Marco Diaz is kind of like my animated twin. Like if you would have drawn me in animated form, that would have been me if I had a mole and black belt in martial arts, and he actually likes the compliment. And when I talked to Ab by saying, "Hey, with the cosplay, do you think I would be so good at playing that character in live action?" By saying, "Oh, they actually would have done that. That would have been crazy." And then the last thing I told him by saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, good job for being cast for like having additional voices for the latest Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem film." And then he asked back, "Do you like the film?" By saying, and then I said in return was, "Oh yeah, it was one of the best animated films in 2023." So I feel like moments like that where I get to meet voice actors, or in this case, meet filmmakers and other celebrities. And I even met YouTubers like Freezy Films, who's like a big popular movie content creator. And he was, the funniest thing is, he actually compliments like, "Oh, I like your content stuff and I like your voiceover work," by saying, "Wait, you listen to my voiceover work from a content creator that has like over 100K subscribers, actually checks out my stuff?" And the fact that we just compliment with each other, it's kind of like we were just being fanboys to each other. And the funniest thing is, even though with all these content creators, voice actors, celebrities, I'm a young lad and they're older than me, but I'm such a tall dude. I'm like 5'11". I'm like, how am I taller than these legends that are a lot more recognizable with their work despite they're older than me? But I don't know, going to cons, whether I'm cosplaying, meeting these voice actors, celebrities, or content creators, I feel like those were the biggest achievement by saying, you know what? I'm so glad to be a pop cultural nerd I am. Secondly, it's such an unexpected build up by saying, I've watched this, I've seen you in this, and then here I am. And ever since I meet those people in person, it's like, you know what? Whenever I meet them, not only that just gives me joy, that kind of gives me inspiration by saying, yeah, maybe it's not too late to like, keep going of what I'm doing, to voice act, to entertain, to like be performed, but also be passionate for what these talented people are usually capable of doing. So I just feel like every time I have those experiments, so like usually with those experiences, I'm like, yeah, those are like the highlights of the year, highlights of my life. And no matter like where I'm going, whether it's that con or any cons in general, I'm just gonna be like, that's gonna be checking off my bucket list going. I feel like those are like more open door possibilities that make me say, I definitely gotta do this like more often, and then that gives me more hope for like more unexpected achievements to earn. But yeah, that's what I'm most
Whoa.
proud of, for me at least.
Wow. Very, very interesting. Ooh, okay. Here is my next question. In Sonic Revolution, do you have any favorite panel moments that you find either memorable or funny?
Definitely, for sure. If I definitely got to remember, so if I had to remember like the funniest one, I mean, the easiest one that I could think of in my head is easily the Babylon Rogues one. Like, there's like two, three jokes that I actually did like. Like, I mentioned the one earlier about, when the characters were trying to like sing off and then Storm just unexpectedly make an ad lib joke. There was another one that I found that was pretty funny, whereas I think there's one moment where I think Krause's Rocket asked like a math equation that involves turtles, and then Storm just said, "What are the six turtles' names? Leo, Rev, Donnie, Mikey, Paul, and Tucky." And I could tell True Blue was trying his best to stay in character as Jet as he laughed, and then I could tell some of the audience members did laugh at that. And then literally when Wade was trying to look at a calculator, and then Storm was like, "Oh, I thought it was a giant iPod," and then True Blue as Jet says, "Storm, we need to like help you out. Do you need some help with your brain cells?" And then I just ad lib a random joke where I just said, "I just lost my brain cells through a kidney transplant." And I could tell Andrew and some of the folks by saying, "Wait, wait, wait, what?" And then I like how True Blue stays in character's jet by saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, man. Do you want to talk about it?" And then I just ad lib by saying, like, "You have to speak to my lawyer." And then he overreacts, "Who's your lawyer?" And then I try my best to like, I have like a very silent laugh by saying, "Okay, don't laugh. Don't break out of character. Don't break out of character." And then in my head by saying, Storm is not that smart, by saying, think of the most dumbest character that Storm could have as his potential lawyer to talk about his health surgery transplant. And then out of nowhere, I just made him say, "My lawyer is none other than Big the Cat." And I remember Andrew's reaction was saying, "No way, that's unbelievable." And it's like, that moment in the revolution of Babylon's was funny. So outside of comedy for the Would You Rather, I like during the Would You Rather panel, we talked about theme parks when it comes to like, oh, which parks would you rather go to? Disney, Universal, Halloween versus Christmas. And the intriguing part was like everyone just went very analytical of what superpower would you prefer from teleportation powers, or in this case,
Mhm.
having the ability to fly. And I was not expecting everyone to like go super in depth. Like my answer would have been so simple by saying teleport, so I could just go anywhere, wherever I want. But then when they get to like not just the analytical aspects of it, but just science, like literally small details about it, I was like, wow, I'm honestly surprised they took it that much seriously. And lastly, the one thing I would mention is the fact that I think two things like literally just caught me in my interest where I think somebody asked about would you rather be in the Secret Rings world, and then we get to the Black Knight. Then when Andrews asked a question about his like slaying a dragon, I was like, hey, how about training one, ah? And then I think Kelp did his best impression of Hiccup where he goes, thank you for nothing, you useless reptile. And then for me, as the pop culture dude as I was referencing Hiccup's voice actor Jay Barucho's other movies that nobody's gonna understand by saying, "Oh yeah, that's the guy that didn't make it out alive at this is the end." And then I made another inside joke by saying, "I liked you in the movie. She's out of my league." And I'm like, nobody's gonna get these references unless you know the actor's other work. So that's like how super in depth my humor is, where it's like, oh, I did not expect that to be a reference to this other actor's work. And then lastly, the last part of from that panel was the fact that everyone was having this huge debate over anime versus cartoon. And then usually for me, I had my valid reasons that everyone would choose anime, and then I choose the more cartoon side of that because that was more influential to me than anime growing up. And to me, like around that time, I'm like, yep, I'm definitely gonna be like an alien in the crowd, where I'm definitely gonna be like the minority, while everyone just choose the exact same opinion. And personally, I do want to stand out from the rest. And I think the funniest thing to like the best way to end that question was I think it was either Baskin Robbins versus Cold Stone for like favorite ice cream by saying, "Wow, after that whole debate between cartoons versus anime, boom, let's just talk about which ice cream joint would you prefer?" I'm like, huh, what a great way to end that stream. So I feel like Babylon Rogues was the funniest one, but I feel like the Would You Rather one was very intriguing, which I will say for once outside of Babylon's Rogue, which was very fun to do. But in that one, and Would You Rather by saying because I think I remember by saying it's kind of refreshing that we're actually, being ourselves and not voicing anthropomorphic animals for once for a stream for fans to enjoy. So I feel like those
Mhm.
two in particular were like fan favorites that I do enjoy the most.
Yeah, but like the would you rather is kind of like the audience like just getting to know you guys, just as yourselves, They're like, "Oh, they prefer this over that." It's like like I yeah, that's the panel I found out Andrew calls Baskin Robbins Baskin Robinson.
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah.
So
I said it for so long, and no one corrected me for years.
And it's so funny, and then I literally told Doom about it, and she's like, "You're kidding me, right?" I'm like, "No." It's like, "Check the live stream on Twitch, on the Rebels Twitch," and she's like, "Oh my gosh," and then she's like, "I'm gonna hold this over his head now." So, and then now Andrew just kinda makes it as a funny inside joke now that whenever I show them eating ice cream from Baskin Robbins, he just says Bas and then, like, Doom's like, it's like, I bet you Andrew's gonna say Baskin Robinson. And then Andrew actually just does it out of spite to get a reaction out of Dale.
I love that. That's my favorite Disney movie. Brought to you by Meet the Baskin Robinsons.
Like it's just so funny. Like I didn't even realize you said it like that, Andrew, until I looked back at the stream and I'm like, he says Robinson, not Robbins. It was like so, but yeah, like getting to know you guys outside of the characters, was very eye-opening. Because I like Kevin helped me come up with the would you rather questions and they're like, oh, this like some of them were pretty tough to answer because you're kind of like and like you said, the analytical aspect where it's about which power would you prefer, and then you're like, I did not expect them to go analytical with this and talk about physics and all that. So it's very eye-opening. Yeah, like the would you rather is very, very eye-opening.
It is. It's like, wow, I did not expect this to extend for like 15, 20 minutes of our time. But hey, it's interesting to hear people's different perspectives on it at least.
Mhm. All right, Andrew. Do you have another question for Daniel?
Yeah, what's been your most favorite thing like to produce?
Favorite thing to produce
Ooh.
as in like in content or voiceover?
Let's say content.
Okay, what I like about in producing content, you know what? So let me just go to Pop Culture Dude because basically that's like, the main source that I usually have. So if I'm talking about stream wise, I definitely like the tier list for me because I'm like, well, if I don't want to risk on getting copyright for inserting movie clips or all that, so then the videos, or in this case, does not get like taken down, then I can have an easy way to talk about films with friends of mine. And it's a good thing that just like you guys have easier ways to like have other people like share their perspective on it. But if we're not talking about streams and talking about content themselves, I definitely say vlogs are like, even though they don't usually make the most views, unfortunately, but I feel like they're like the best ones that I usually enjoy because I'm definitely using a pop cultural property, no matter if it's based on the Sonic movies or I'm vlogging myself to go to Universal or Disney. And it's kind of like I'm using the IP brand, like that's the selling point of the content, but then you're having the content creator like himself, me, as I'm referring to, steering the ship, showing myself personality, showing my sense of humor, and actually embrace more of like not just my knowledge, but also how my interactions with. I kind of treat it like it's my own TV show in a way, which is funny because I think me and my close friends made a Drake and Josh parody called Dan and Gabe, and it's like a compilation of my earlier days on YouTube from Woody and Daffy Duck, and then some of those clips that we put on the Pop Culture Dude, and the fact that we liked the theme song from the original show, we decided to put like our own cover of it. And I'm like, well, it's kind of like a self meta inside like build up legacy that I've created. But even outside of vlogs, there's like this very underrated upload that I've made like probably back in 2023 where I actually like made my first like my very first like passion short film project that's called Sleepless, was kind of like a depiction of my insomnia health issues because that's kind of like a personal health issue that I struggle with. Like, yeah, it's still like a constant issue to this day where some people has like, sleep deprived and basically just the drowsy symptoms that like keeps you awake. And I will give credit to another fellow British UK artist that basically did the exact same thing where she made her own short film about her anorexia, but also her health issues. And not only that just brings empathy, but also relatability to those certain topics in particular. And I credit her for that from what she's done. And not just taking it from a very introspective level of like, having a self awareness about your health. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm definitely going to have the courage to like do it. And the best thing about that short film, I just basically filmed that like 90% myself, like literally 90% myself, and nobody else filmed it except for my dad for like one major scene, which even some drama movies, like even the Truman Show from Jim Carrey, like there was one influence at the very end of the short film where I'm walking outside, I'm like, yeah, that was very inspired by the ending of the Truman Show. And even though it was kind of heartwarming where some people in the comments actually share like there's two things. Like one, they share like they could relate to the topic of the struggles of falling asleep and actually finding peace, serenity, but also the struggle of like going to sleep on time. And the other thing I also want to point out is there's even some people that actually credit like, the short film itself, like how the way it was filmed, even though I did this on my iPhone Pro 14, but it was like all envisioned in my head, and I'm the one that did all the shots except for the ending scene. And literally around that time, it's kind of like I'm showing a very underrated aspect that most people mostly don't me for. Like usually I'm like the funny, energetic guy whenever you see me in like in vlogs or videos or none of that. But it's kind of interesting to show a little bit more of like a deep personal struggle that I have, and then people can actually open up to like have their own self awareness about it. And I just feel like around that time, and just give credit to that other UK artist that literally did the exact same thing for her own short film. And I just feel like that was like quite rewarding for me to like having the guts to express that out. And then other than that, I just go back to the usual things that I usually like doing, whether it's vlogging or in this case making like my own content for like making the videos that still feels 100% me at the core, but showing like embracing like my style of humor, my passion behind these pop cultural properties. Heck, I would even say like in my old channel for Wayne Daffy Duck, I made a 3.5 hour movie when I was like what 16, 17 years old with plush toys. And we literally spent like a $2K budget just for going from different locations for another. even if it doesn't age well looking bad at it, but literally in my mind, I was like, man, the amount of dedication that I had, which I will credit my father for, like, the words of advice that he gave to me when I started becoming a content creator from the very start is, if you treat it like a business, it'll pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, it'll pay you like a hobby. And it's your choice to use that responsibly. I mean, I guess you could say it's like with great power comes great responsibility because, yeah, it is true. It's like if you treat it well with enough effort, dedication, and care, then people will show up to see it. And then after when I did that work for the 3.5 hour movie I did from the old channel, William Daffy Duck, and doing those vlogs and that short film, it's like, it's kind of like brings like I can like bring some things that fans like and crowd please them with the Sonic content, but also try to branch out into other things that I am capable of and express multiple sides of me. It's kind of like, I don't know, you're getting one aspect of my personality, you get one aspect of this thing that I'm mostly known for, and I just get to embrace it all. So from those specific uploads that I mentioned from the Pop Culture Dude, but even from the old channel, those are the best ones by saying, yeah, I think as the creator, the imaginative creator that I was behind about it, it's like, yeah. And I'm not trying to brag or flex. It's like, there's no other bigger fan of the content who creates this than me myself. Like, it's great to have fans like themselves to enjoy it, but I just feel like for me, I'm the biggest fan of my own work. And I feel like anyone who is like feeling proud of what they created, they should feel the same way too.
Mm, nice.
Quite
Ooh.
inspirational.
Oh, okay. I see a question from Cookie Star in the chat. I do have a question for Daniel. Which both Mario and Sonic character do you relate to the most? Ooh, great
I had a
question.
feeling you were gonna bring this up because I know you are a fan of both and you're pretty curious. So I think it's gonna be pretty self-explanatory that I will say yes, despite he's a villain, I can relate to Eggman no matter which iteration it is, whether it's the movie iteration, no matter if it's the game iteration, and it probably makes sense why I get cast in different iterations of that character because yeah, sometimes I could get a bit irritated by some people that don't really like follows my instructions and directions, or in some cases, sometimes I like creating my own tech. Like, I won't say adventures because I'm not like a 300 IQ genius, but I definitely like making my own creations in my own time and having my utilization of time, having technology, some of the certain aspects. And there's some certain times where I can relate to like, the frustrations that Eggman does, but also with this sense of humor, but also having like this neutral mentality of like, be chill, but at the exact same time, just lock in whenever you need to like go on full on, boss level mode, especially like in the world of gaming. So I could definitely relate to that in that aspects. I will admit there are some aspects where I can relate to Sonic when it comes to like the positivity, the attitude, but also looking out for others that are needed in me. And even though I don't really see myself as like a national born leader like to myself in real life, but I definitely see myself a leader to like my personal group with my close friends and definitely be like a guide to them in that way. So I would say half of it is Sonic, and then a little bit of that antisocial like spectrum aspect where Shadow could be like that way, have that little bit of edge, a little bit of like rock music that I could relate to both Sonic and Shadow in a way. And sometimes I can relate to like Knuckles' sense of humor whenever it goes a little bit more fish out of water, but a little bit more like gullible in that aspect. So I like that from those specific characters from Eggman, Sonic, Shadow, and Knuckles. And then for the Mario characters, I will admit, sometimes, like Luigi, I do get overreactive. Like, even though I got my over a fear of bugs, but I will admit, when there's like a giant spider, or in this case, a giant roach, sometimes I just go a little overreactive by saying, "Talk to the bug!" Like, literally just grab like a shoe or something and just slap something. And then you got people in my family saying, "Relax, it's such a bug," by saying, "No, venom, poison." They basically would make you consume all of their blood, and then you'll be suffering in a hospital. So very Luigi aspect. And yes, Cookie Star, I may not voice Luigi that much, but thanks to Blade City, shout out to him, voicing a couple of comic dubs, and I feel like that aspect in particular kind of fits more Luigi core than Mario core. And I will
Mm,
admit, I feel like Waluigi is also another fun comparison because not because Waluigi's just a joke, just the fact that physically he could be like a punching bag whenever he kind of like physically fail at things. And then sometimes I feel a little bit let loose physically where I just feel like, wacky and cartoonish out nonsense. So I would say on the Mario characters, definitely Luigi, Waluigi would be like, good comparisons like then I don't know, a Wario, a Mario, or a Bowser if that was the case. So just to recap, Luigi, Waluigi for Mario, Then for the Sonic characters, mainly Eggman, half Sonic, a little bit of Shadow, a little bit of Knuckles, and then there you go. That's where I can literally say by saying, "Oh my gosh, these characters are literally me."
Mm. Oh, Cookie. Wow. I also happened to know that you were also gonna mention Waluigi.
I just think it just would be pretty funny in a way. Let's be honest, I did say on the Waluigi card, what, is it because I definitely share his bones by saying like, "Do you want to mess with me? Do you want to do the Snoopy as usual I see when?" I don't usually do the Waluigi voice, but I just think it's fun just to like say out of nowhere by saying, "Again, I'm being Super Smash Bros. Big Brother Wario only skipping you like his own video game. Why not more Waluigi time?" I don't know. Too funny to me.
Oh. Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
thanks, Cookie.
Okay, here is my next question for you. Do you have any advice for people who are aspiring to be voice actors?
Oh, that's honestly a really good question. So here's my words of advice for most of the voice actors that aspire to like do one nowadays. Number one, you just gotta think of what's the vision? What is your purpose of being a voiceover artist? Like, are you just doing it just for fun as a hobby? Do you actually want to take commitments of finding a voiceover role that you actually want to make a living and be passionate about it? And first and foremost, you just gotta be like, what is your vocal range? What is your talent? Like you gotta like use your throat like it's your musical instrument. Like for any music artist that can relate to this, you just gotta find the sounds. You just gotta feel like, are you alto? Are you bass? Are you tenor? It's kind of like, rehearsing yourself in chorus class, which when I was in musical theater class, I just feel like the vocal exercises from tongue twisters to warm-ups to learning the basis of your vocal cords, it's like, it's kind of like the same way with voiceover. So I definitely say like use your voice like it's a musical instrument and find the right notes that you can use with it. And secondly, you just gotta know your range. Like, are you more into the typecast of high pitch range characters, low pitch range, creepy, sassy, sweet, soft, wacky, over the top? So literally in my mind, I was like, well, you just gotta find ways that you believe in yourself that you're capable of like making that vocal cord. And here's my words of advice if you are in the voice like when you're meeting other content creators or directors, here's like my words of advice. Usually, when they say, "Hey, would you like to voice over for this role?" Usually, I would question them first before I give them an answer by saying, "Would you be kind to like at least show me your content? At least let me see your background." Like the thing is, you just got to be very careful of like who you're making, partnership with because you got to look at the content by saying, "Are you sure this like individual, this user, this content creator is actually like taking the work seriously? Let me check like, are you a good editor? Do you have like good relationship with your voice actors? They're nothing like, too negative, too lazy, too inappropriate." And then in my mind by saying, if I see the vision to believe it, and if I see the pitch, and then usually I would quiz them by saying like, "So what makes you approach to me for this role or this idea?" Because personally, I would say this for many voice actors, just don't say yes all the time just for the sake of being a crowd pleaser. Like if you're
Mhm.
agreeing to make a deal to like be a part of a voiceover project or this voiceover role, you just gotta know not just the people you're working with, but you just gotta see like why is it worth your time? Why is it worth the effort? And see
Mhm.
if you have a good relationship with not just the voice director, in this case, the content creator behind the content, but you just feel like, is this a worthy addition into your voiceover project? So the point is, you gotta think twice of like, if someone decided to give you an offer, like I definitely would recommend that you should ask them like their background work first before you decide to tag along with their content. So then you don't feel like you regret the decision you make, but also you feel like you feel satisfied with the choice that you agree with the deal. And when it comes to like the process of depending of what vocal range that you're capable of doing, no matter if it's raspy, high, low, no matter what it is. Definitely take your time on it, especially if you're taking retakes multiple times. Like the struggle is like if I'm doing like an Eggman voice, don't overblow it or else you're gonna break your own vocal cords. Because I remember I overblown of taking like 10 different takes of the exact same line. And I will advise for most of you to say like don't put too much pressure on the vocal cords or else you would suffer the consequence of not speaking for a while and find the right nutrient fluence to like use the liquids or else you will feel embarrassed of like not speaking to your colleagues, your coworkers, your family members because you sacrifice your own vocal cords just to give out your best 10 out of 10 performance before you satisfy yourself. And once when you're voice recording, even though yes, the director and the content creator will take notes and basically they would give you like their review, they'll share their critiques by saying, can you adjust this? Can you retake this line again because I hear some noise in the background? Which yes, that is very integral. Is make sure you're in a private space where you hear no sounds at all, no air, no mom and dad making noises in the kitchen or in your household, and make sure your animals are like step with love and care where they're not interrupting you multiple times. Just make sure you have like a quiet space. Usually I would record in my closet because, it's the most, I wouldn't say it's like the most cliche place that you can record. It's just like, there's not that much vibrant sound frequency that you can have in the background. So definitely have all the private space. And the biggest struggle that I will say that is to me to this day is make sure you don't have mouth clicks like literally like in the take of the line because some voice directors, some can get away with it, but some are very specific by saying, oh, that's too her in the background. The mic of the air is a bit too close where it sounds like you're blowing like on the mic, like you're doing an ASMR session, or there's a click in the background where it's not going to sound right if you're going to deliver this comedic scene, dramatic scene. Like you just got to be like very specific on making sure it sounds clear. Like I would recommend listening to the lines that you record at least 3, 5 times, and then you're going to be like, I think this is better. Like you got to coach yourself. Like coach yourself by saying, do you think this is a great line delivery before I send this to the creator or the director? And then if you're satisfied, listen to it multiple times, then you convert it to no matter what you do, MP3 file, MP4 file, Google Drive, no matter what it is. And then there you go. Sometimes you have to be your own teacher, you got to be your own coach, and you just got to know the biggest enemy that you have to deal with is yourself, no matter if you're having the pressure of voicing this role or in this case having slight regrets. You just got to have confidence, less pressure on yourself, be comfortable with it, and be your vocal talent, be your best friend, be the musical instrument that you could play, find the sounds for it, and then there you go. You can go so many far places with it if you have the right roles, the right skills, the right people you work with, and then there you go. More possibilities are endless for you as an upcoming voice actor.
Wow, very, very insightful advice. I agree with all of it, especially the one that you mentioned that especially if someone like DMs you or approaches you if you're interested, yeah, don't just take it without knowing the full details behind the project or the comic dub,
Mm.
and then you kind of have to really think about, is this really worth my time? Because you never know, who you might end up working with, because sometimes you may never know, like sometimes you may find out more about a person until you're actually working with them, and it's kind of like a way to like make sure you don't fall into that, without the because there's some people that do approach you without really having a plan, of like, oh, where's this going to go with the project or the comic dub, and because I think you're like the first person who's actually like mentioned this type of advice too, Daniel. So
Really? Like out of all the
yeah.
voice actors I'm the only one that actually addressed this certain topic.
Mhm. Yeah. Like all
I
the
just
it's so interesting. Like out of like the ones out of the Revo VAs, I would say. Like the professional ones, yeah, they say that. But out of like the Revo VAs, like you're like the only person who's mentioned about like don't just accept everything as you go. Like don't just accept it's kind of like it's like an analogy of like don't like accept the first job that you get because
Mhm.
you kind of like you need to do your research of like and that's why at least it's always good to ask the person who approached you all these questions because at least like you can yeah, like it pretty much speaks volumes of like if they're prepared to like answer your questions,
Mhm.
because I think like the ones who start out like they don't realize that like, oh my gosh, you're gonna ask me all these questions I don't know how to answer, like, and it really speaks about their character that they didn't really think it through, when they're doing, especially when they're starting up like a voice acting project, for like an audio drama or a comic dub or any other type of media, and it's good to always ask those questions before you even consider accepting, why they approached you. It's definitely it's definitely insightful, that you mentioned that. Like, yeah, don't just like because of course when you first start out, you're not gonna get that much. That's just how it is when you first start out on anything. Like you're not gonna get as much like offers, like don't just be like it kind of comes off as like you're desperate for something,
Mhm.
like and it's very insightful. Yeah, like don't go for the very first thing, just especially when you first start out because it's not right because what if like especially if you don't ask them and then you kind of and then when you're working with them you kind of realize, oh, what if their behavior's not okay? What if their behavior's not professional? What if they treat others terribly? And then you're like, whoa, I don't want to be in this environment, so
And another example I want to point out, where sometimes once when you complete the work for them, but they never keep in touch and active of the progress of the production, and then you have to wait maybe either weeks or months to like give a proper answer, but then you realize sometimes they can either cancel the production or in this case they would just move on from the production, and then in your brain you're just like, I feel like I just wasted my sweat and my time, my risk of my vocal cords for nothing. So it's like you just got to think twice of like, of course everyone has a busy life. Some will like not take the production seriously. Like obviously it's integral to like have a good time and to be entertained but also have fun with the process. But with the partnership that you're dealing with, is it's very integral that you have to be insightful of like who you're working with, because at the end of the day it's like you just can't be a crowd pleaser saying, yes, I'm just desperate to get a voiceover project, because like I said, I just need to see like, do you treat this professionally as much as I would
Mhm.
approach it? Because I'm not just doing this just for fun. I just want to feel like this is a worthy addition that I could share to the public, or in this case, we could cooperate together. Because that's the thing. It's like with any voice director, any voice actor, you just got to make sure, is this a healthy relationship that you could contain with together in
Yeah.
the cooperation? Because if you don't have that with each other, then you don't earn the deal at all.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Like because it's always best to like ask all those questions and be wise about your decision, like because as you said, you take it very professionally. You're not doing it just for fun, and entertainment. You're doing it because you actually want to pursue something with this, like you actually take it as like a professional, you know? And then like if the person that approached you doesn't really take it professionally, you're like, I don't think I should be, especially if your goals don't align, like I think that's also important, like it like if the person approaches you with the intent of like just for like where they don't even act professional and they kind of just treat it as like a casual thing, it's like, is this really worth my time?
Nope.
So
It'll be a scummy move.
yeah, so it's kind of like just be wary of who just be wise and wary of who you work with, because like on the surface they may seem, they may present themselves as like nice, but then behind the scenes you're kind of like, whoa, and you kind of find out people's true colors, especially when you're working on the project, and then you kind of like, oh, so very, very insightful advice, Daniel.
Mm.
So yeah, reminder, aspiring voice actors, once when they offer you, don't just quiz them. Think twice before you make a quick decision. You'll left yourself open.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Andrew, do you have another question for Daniel?
I do actually, yeah. Has there been any roles that have challenged you as an actor?
Oh, definitely for sure.
Ooh.
Like as in voiceover?
Yeah.
Oh man, okay. I know I've been requested as this character the most, and I'm not surprised because ever since I made that whole Sonic voiceover character demo reel, which by the way, that was the exact same upload of how somebody from Revo was like, all right, I actually think he would be considered as a good Storm the Albatross. And I will say, definitely doing the Mike Pollock Eggman voice, I'm gonna be honest with you. I understand from the community, it's like the fan favorite voice, but the one thing that is so struggling is the fact that whenever he shouts or screams, or in this case has to retake a different line again, oh my gosh, not only this feels like a heart burning cardio workout, it's the fact that it literally kills my throat, or at the point where I'm like, okay, because one thing I have to remind myself is saying, yeah, Daniel, I know it's so different from your voice, and you know why you're getting cast for this because it sounded so close to Pollock's take on the character, and that's why you got cast into this role. And my brain's like, yes, I know, but whenever it's like a long comic dub, I'll say as a long comic dub where he has a lot of dialogue, I'm like, wow, this is too much. And then secondly, since Eggman's a genius, and then when he goes to like some certain like very high vocabulary words, I literally had to go on Google Translate by say, how do you pronounce this word? So then I don't butcher it while I'm recording. And I will admit, there were some recordings which I will admit it was really awful from physically, mentally, but also vocally as well, where at certain points where I just literally just broke my own vocal cords from like a 10th or 11th take of a shout or scream. And I actually just broke my voice where I basically just couldn't speak, where I kind of felt like a male version of Ariel from The Little Mermaid, where I just lost my voice and I couldn't even speak. So then it took like a couple of days to like, have some honey, lime, ginger, some homemade grandma soup, and having some cough drops and having some water. But then that's why I was like very skeptical about it. And around that era, there's usually some voiceover directors that will often typecast me in that role like so much where I just feel like I just want to take a break or at least retire from voice acting and just suggest somebody else by saying, could you cast someone else for the role because I think this is too much for me? And it just leads to like huge regrets when it comes to that. Like, don't get me wrong, it's such an iconic role, and yes, I understand that I get credit from the sounds that I could do with the character, but when it comes to like, a retake, or in this case, numerous time of amounts of dialogues where he's monologuing, no matter if it's for a comic dub or for another original production, like it really hurts. Like it really brings to like health risks so much where I think at one point, I know this is gonna sound crazy and probably cruel. There's one point where I accidentally coughed blood in like one comic dub that was like in August where I did like
Oh.
3 issues. Like, yeah, it was really that awful. Where I literally, I'm not gonna mention names because I don't want to be rude, but I mentioned this creator by saying it's okay if you not contact me for a long time and actually cast like the understudy for this role. This is like too much for me. And literally, it does get to like stress and frustration where it's like too much of that role, too much of that character. And then that's why I decided to make like an original voiceover demo reel where it's kind of like well, it wasn't entirely original. It's just like other voiceover projects that I've done by saying, I gotta show people that I'm more versatile than just a one trick pony for this one character. So don't get me wrong, I appreciate the credit when it comes to deserve, but literally in my head by saying I literally just give some of those creative advice by saying just make sure the role is not massive where he's like too much, like so much dialogue. I don't mind like a supporting role or at least like a small role where it's like very utter, but if it's like a big massive role, I mean, I'm thinking 50-50. Like it's like a heads or tails coin toss. It's like, well, I want to rinse and repeat this again, but this time just don't go too hard on it, or just tell the creator by saying thanks, but no thanks. Just recast someone else that could vocally, but not just vocally, but actually handles a little bit more like take ease on the pressure where it's not too much like overstraining my voice. Like literally, I think there's one moment where I voiced that character and I was off to see a movie and I decided to like not say a word for like 7-8 hours. And then usually the
Oh.
family's like, hey Daniel, what's wrong? And then literally I had to use I had to pretend I had to use sign language or use text messages, and it's like, oh, this is not going to be easy since I know those guys have never experienced voice acting. But that's also a good sign for them by saying, "Oh, so Daniel actually takes this seriously. This is not just a hee hee ha ha fun side game. Like he's putting so much commitment, so much dedication that he's literally risking his own voice just for turning off the AC, turning off the fan, and just sweat and do everything just to do this voiceover role for 3-4 hours. So that's how people in my household's like, yeah, Daniel take this as a big deal, so it's better off to not bother that space.
Mm. Wow. That's just crazy that you literally coughed up blood in a session?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh,
In a
that's
session.
scary.
And what's even more scarier, it was at midnight, it's like past 3 a.m. That was what's
Oh
even
my
more
good.
terrifying.
Oh my goodness.
That happened
That
like around in 2023, and I'm like, yeah, never doing that again.
yeah, yeah, another huge advice, audience, do not like if you start coughing up blood, you have to stop yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Please
Mm-hmm.
don't overexert yourself. That I think that's like your body telling you, "Hey, you need to like take it easy," you know?
Mm-hmm.
So but But that's just like very, very interesting, to learn. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like that's scary. Like you coughing up
It,
blood during a session, especially that late at night. Oh my gosh,
mhm.
that's scary.
It is, and you and now for half of you people wondering, "Yup, this is why I struggle to sleep whenever I edit or make voiceover things." And thankfully, I talked to my therapist by saying, like, take at ease on time wise of my vocal range, but also my timing of like take balance it to like have more self care for my health, but also self time to like be 100% self aware of the risk and the choice that you're about to make, or else you're just gonna end
Mhm.
up hurting yourself, no matter how
Mhm.
dedicated you are.
Mhm, absolutely.
So yeah, I'm keeping that for mind for any voiceover projects, especially if it's for the same role. I'm thinking that in mind before I made the decision.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah. Because it's kind of like a lesson learned. You're like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that again."
Hmm It's like,
So
look, it's fine to take it seriously, but not that serious.
yeah, because especially if you're putting your health at risk, oh man.
Hmm So
Ooh,
once again, think twice, people. Just saying.
mhm. Ooh, okay. Here is my next question for you, Daniel. What is your favorite Sonic game and why? Like, I know you kind
Oh,
of touched upon it, but I would love to hear more explanation about it.
yeah, personal fan. Favorite Sonic game? Yeah, that is quite a tricky one. So, of course, '06 was like my introduction to the game, but I would not praise it like it's my number one favorite. So I will say, like, definitely during my childhood era, definitely Generations was my favorite game around that time, just because it's literally like my, not just like into the world, or in this case, get to my introduction of like knowing these levels, where's this game from, which I will say the end credit sequence definitely helped me out by saying, oh, okay, so that's from this old game and this game by saying like, all right, so now I don't need to look up on a fan Wikipedia page just for the sake of it. But outside, of course, Generations was my favorite as a child around that era. But as I got older and actually experienced like a lot more Sonic games, definitely I would say for the modern era, I know this is going to be a pretty cliche answer, but I gotta say, like, even though I enjoy the gameplay more in Sonic Adventure 1, but the story of Sonic Adventure 2 is so rich. Like, even though the
Mhm,
gameplay mechanics of Tails and Knuckles is quite different compared to SA1, but the gameplays from Sonic and Shadow from their earlier levels, including their fight combat sequences. And the best thing about SA2 is not just the story, it's just like how, even though, yes, some of the mechanics may not age well from 2001, well, I'm super biased
mhm,
because one, that's the year that I was born. Secondly, it marked 10 years of, the Sonic franchise. Obviously, Child the Hedgehog and Rouge the Bat were introduced into that game. And thanks to that game, it believes a legacy to like other iterations where it got referenced in Sonic X Season 2, which they did their own adaptation. And then my favorite Sonic movie out of the trilogy is the third film where they took inspiration from Sonic Adventure 2. So it was like the blueprint of like the pinnacle of like what a Sonic game should be. Like fun and nostalgic. Like obviously you got the levels, you got the iconic songs, which this is such a huge debate for me that I say Sonic Adventure 2, in my personal opinion, it's like on par with the classic games where the music score, like, of course, you got the songs of Live and Learn, Escape from the City, and all the solo songs that were re-editioned from SA1, from It Doesn't Matter, Believe in Myself, Unknown, the Eggman theme song, which I really like that in the game, and I like how the third movie in particular, referenced that Eggman theme, which that got me happy for any SA2 longtime fans. And outside the music is the fact that I feel like aside from maybe SA1, it was like probably the first Sonic game that will actually get to the more emotional core aspect from Shadow and Maria, but also Shadow sacrificing the world, like literally
mhm.
where Sonic in the game take their sacrifices, and the fact that literally fans themselves took inspiration where they literally make like a reimagined. Which Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, you were the voice of Sonic in that reimagined animated short, like they were doing the last event scene, and it just
Oh
recreated the
yeah,
scene of SA2. Yeah, I had a feeling that
I was
was your voice.
there,
Like
yeah.
when I literally when I checked the description, I'm like, that's Andrew? Wow. That's honestly a pretty good Ryan Drummond impression. Like, it's so unbelievable. I was like, you sure they didn't get the real Ryan? It's like, wow, Andrew's a true trooper. And I respect him for that. So that game in particular was very influential from the music, the set pieces, and the gameplay. And I will say, like, yeah, that's probably like my all-time favorite one, even though it's not, a surprising answer. But if I have to give shouts to other ones aside from Generation from Nostalgia and SA2 being the all-time favorite, part of me definitely likes Unleashed because the music is very therapeutic, especially okay, I'm pretty sure whether of you guys in the chat has done this or not. Whenever a Poto's Day or even some of the more comforting music tracks from Sonic Unleashed, sometimes you use that music for cooking or reading, or sometimes you just want to chill and relax. Yeah, it says Sonic Unleashed is kind of like one of those lo-fi-esque music that you just feel like you want to be in a more comfortable setting. And I feel like that game in particular kind of gives you a little bit more of that comfort that you should have whenever you're doing like your more peaceful side hobbies just for yourself. And outside of Sonic Unleashed, I definitely say like the later games have definitely improved. Like Mania is probably my favorite classic Sonic game after Sonic 2. And then for the modern Sonic games, Frontiers was great. Sonic and Shadow Generations honestly slightly make the original game slightly better from the Chows, but also the new additions they added in the Sonic game, like in his story. But also Shadow's story is like pretty rich, but also very creative in how the way they approach Shadow's legacy as well. So I feel like the remastered of that game that follows up with the original is pretty nice. So I will say the modern ones definitely SA2. Shout outs to Unleashed for being one of the best ones. That I think Unleashed was like the first Sonic game that actually made me cry because the friendship between Sonic and Chip just felt very integral, but also somewhat emotional in a way. By saying, "Am I literally tearing up for a Hedgehog video game as of right now?" And I just felt for the emotions because video games usually don't make me cry, but I think Unleashed was probably like one of the first ones. So I respect Unleashed for that. And then, like I said, for the classics, Mania and the second Sonic game is my favorite. And then the modern one is easily Frontiers of Shadow Generation. So I would say like they're good, but SA2 is still the go for me.
Mm. Yeah, that's totally understandable. Like we all know in the Sonic Adventure 2 is like the most popular, because of its like rich storytelling. And the fact is that, the main villain of the game, you know, um, Professor Gerald just has like all this pent up rage and anger, because literally like the like pretty much the um gun took Maria away from him, because the government and gun considered Project Shadow a threat, and literally like and this is more amplified in the adaptation version in Sonic Movie 3 where it's even more evident,
A little bit.
like the fact that it's clear in the movie universe that like Maria was his favorite grandchild, obviously, because it's very relatable in real life, that like there in some households and families, they always have like that golden child that they dote on,
Hmm.
and the fact that literally like people have noted this down that like, oh, did you know that when 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 um when Commander Walters, when he was younger, was trying to prevent the other like gun soldier at firing at them when they were running away, it literally ended up shooting at like like Shadow's chaos energy in that tube thing, and it exploded. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, isn't it?" I like someone pointed out on Twitter, like, "Isn't it ironic that Maria died because of Shadow's powers?" I was like, "Whoa!"
And the
It's
fact
like,
that Gerald keeps them contained too, where they both regretted it.
yeah, like, and that hits even more because it's like Shadow was like so powerful, and then the fact that his own power ended up killing Maria inadvertently, ironically, it's like, and that hits even more than the way the game version story, and it's like, wow, it's like, it hits even more because in the movies, like, at least they kind of give you like flashback scenes of them bonding, when they first meet, and then what the activities that they do together, you know, like it hurts even more because we all know that like we all know the story that like Maria died. It's like, and it hurts even more in movie 3, obviously, because we get to see how they're like bonding, you know, during their time together, and then the fact that was taken away from Shadow and Gerald, it's like, wow. Like, it hits more in the movie, I would say.
I'm glad somebody like you understands it because that's why I give credit to Sonic Adventure 2. Like, not only just being the blueprint of like having a surprisingly dark and emotional story from a character that's filled with a bunch of fictional, lighthearted, colorful characters that actually have some super in-depth moments that nobody saw coming from SA2. But then when it was adapted in Sonic 3, and I feel like since day one, I was like, yeah, if they make a third movie, they gotta make it based on Sonic Adventure 2, and they better get Keanu Reeves' Shadow. Then boom, that happened. But the twist of how Jeff Fowler and his crew has done it for because they knew that that story in particular is very integral, like not just to the game itself, but very like so beloved to the fans. And obviously, they're curious like how would they able to adapt that? Like obviously, not too far where parents are captured by saying, "Oh no, they just killed a girl and they basically just make it too cool for us." But at least mature, but at least like well balanced in tone of like how the way they utilize it, like instead of just like, hey, let's have a random gun soldier just shoot a little girl and just make it like even more darker than how the source material will do it, is the fact that in the film's adaptation, it's good that we get to see Maria's personality outside of like, being the granddaughter of Gerald Robotnik, but also the fact that it's so heartfelt where obviously everyone else sees Shadow as a threat, an alien, a living weapon, but then Maria definitely sees like, no, I see you more than that. You're my friend that you could be whatever who I want to be. It's like that's so like not just like very faithful to the bond of the characters, but also that adds like a new depth of how the way they see the characters towards each other, and the fact that that one moment where Gerald, Marie, and Shadow were all running together, and the fact that the twist is it's the chaos energy that Gerald and all the science people just contained in the lab, and the fact that cause of the death is from Gerald's research, but also Shadow's power, and the fact that they both feel like that they've regretted what they've done of not protecting Maria from being taken away from Gunn. And then that's where
Mhm.
both of them has their valid reasons to have not just revenge against Gunn, but revenge against the world for what they've done to Maria. And if you think about it, like the plans of both of their revenge earlier in Sonic 3, like even though it's inspired by SA2, but the way that they adapt to the movie is so brilliant from Gerald hacking to awaken Shadow to have his revenge waken 50 years later to making a bombing to attack Commander Walters, and then bringing Ivo in, thinking like there's some imposter trying to mess with his persona. Like Gerald is like the puppet master, attaching the strings to like make his plans inevitable to bring Shadow, bring his long lost grandson, and have the ultimate revenge plan after what Gunn has done to Maria in the first place. And I feel like that aspects that has never been done before in the games, but they actually made it work in the movie adaptation. It's like, see, this is what film adaptations, no matter if it's video games or just anything in general, like comic books, novels, or all that, like, yes, pay respect to it, but make such a new twisting way that both fans and non-fans can get fully invested to the story. And then at the end of the day, you're going to be like, wow, I can't believe they
Mhm.
managed a way to do it correctly.
Mhm, absolutely. Like, I think how Sonic Movie 3 adapts the Sonic Adventure 2 movie, like Sonic Adventure 2 game, they adapt it so well because ever since the first movie, they establish, in the movie universe that Sonic had like an adoptive mother who raised him and then sacrificed herself, so that way he doesn't get taken away from her, obviously. And then they really put them I think someone posted on Twitter that they put like the similarities between Tom and Maria in Sonic Movie 3, and I'm like, I did not notice these similarities until this person pointed out. I'm just like, wow, like they really kind of bring it full circle where you could say that like I've always told people this that like movie Sonic um has a better way to like like you could say he can relate to Shadow's like pain and grief because he's went through it. Like meanwhile, Game Sonic, he can't really relate to Shadow's pain and
That's
grief.
true.
That's the thing, because um with Longclaw in the Sonic in the movie universe, like she was like Sonic's like adoptive mother. And then the fact that he had to witness her like sacrificing herself to protect him, you know, like it took him a long time to like get over it. But he and literally like Shadow's like did you ever get over it? You know, it's like, how did you deal with this pain? You know? So I feel like they did that really well because you could say movie Sonic and movie Shadow are like two sides of the same coin. Like they
Mhm.
both went through like very similar like trauma, you know, and the fact that Tom has brought up that like the good thing about you, Sonic, is that you didn't let that you didn't let that trauma change who you are.
You are.
So the fact that like if Sonic didn't end up with like Tom and Maddie, he probably could have ended up on the same path as Shadow.
Mhm.
Like wanting to get revenge on those like echidnas, right?
Mhm.
That pretty much like killed Longclaw, obviously. And it's like, but he didn't, so I love that it becomes like a full circle moment, when both of them are like talking on the moon, and the fact is that, if you make a mistake, you can't do it alone. And I'm just like, wow, I'm like, I like this version of Sonic more. Like
And
he
guess
can.
what? Guess what, Leah? You are not the only one. And that's honestly my personal hot take that I honestly like movie Sonic a bit more than Game Sonic. Game Sonic is the blueprint, but I feel like for what the writers, Jeff Fowler, and even Ben Schwartz, which Ben Schwartz does a phenomenal job on the vulnerable
Mhm.
side of Sonic since the first movie. Like
Yeah.
ever since the first film, like, yeah, he gets the character, but also the emotional core since the first film till
Mhm.
now. And the word that you keep saying full circle, I definitely want to address this, is the fact that when Sonic feels bad when Tom mistakenly got attacked by Shadow just because he was disguised
Mhm.
as Commander Walters, where Sonic is
Mhm.
like, come on, wake up, wake up, wake up. If you look back in the first movie where Sonic got blown up without an extra bonus life, Tom felt bad, trying to make sure if Sonic's okay and literally risk his life because before Sonic even had Tails and Knuckles in his life, Tom was always there, and Tom had the choice to like not help Sonic away from Robotnik or the government, but he chooses to say to, and then Sonic Tom actually find their ways to like have their misunderstandings be completely fixed to completely understanding towards each other, and they actually risk their lives towards each other. And the fact that that's got paid off in the last three movies, and the fact that Shadow knows the parallel that Sonic had Tom, Shadow had Maria, and then at the very end, where I want to talk about the moon scene, like literally where Shadow was tormenting Sonic by saying, why are you alone? Where are your friends? They came to warn you, but you didn't listen. It's like, yeah, because Sonic definitely takes the more vengeful side of what he could have been if he would have
Mhm.
like not changed who he was. Like he like basically Shadow is like in the movie version is like a what if version of Sonic if he
Mhm.
never had Tom, never had Maddie, Tails and Knuckles, he never
Mhm.
had the family friends. It
Mhm.
probably would have been an eventual wave like Shadow does. And one of my
Mhm.
favorite lines when on the moon scene where Shadow's like, "You won," and then the line that Sonic says, "There are no winners with revenge," and it's like, you know what? I love it when there's literally two opponents having a conflict, but then when they stop the conflict where they easily could have defeated each other or even kill each other, they understand by
Mhm.
saying, "What do you earn when you have vengeance and actually end someone's life? You don't earn anything about it. It just makes you more rageful, more bitter." And then it gets
Mhm.
perfectly to the moon where both Sonic and Shadow has that similarities where he lost Long Claw and Shadow lost Maria, and then he asks him like how he overcomes the loss, and then how thematically and beautifully when the sun shines
Mhm.
of Shadow saying when the light shines, even though the star's gone, like even though the stars, like the memories with Maria is gone, but never lose that light that shines in your heart, just like what Tom tells Sonic, or like what Maria tells Shadow. And then when Shadow feels like he regrets from the mistake that he's done to like be blind by rage, like literally one of my favorite lines is where Shadow's like, I have no choice. And then a similar parallel what Sonic did to Knuckles Sonic 2, like he literally just hands out by saying you always have a choice and making the right choice is not easy. And the way that they use live and learn, they don't do it for
Mhm.
nostalgia. Like if you pay
Yeah.
attention to both of their arcs in the movie, sometimes when you make a mistake in life and if it's not easy to make the
Mhm.
right choice, sometimes, say it with me, you have
You
to
live,
live
live
and
and
learn.
learn. Mhm. Yeah.
It's not a fan service moment, it's a thematic moment. And that's why
Mhm.
that song and the themes of the entire movie felt earned. Not just for the fans, but for the
Mhm.
characters in the story that they developed through.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with everything you said. It's like the way the filmmakers like thematically use the song, I think is more effective than the way they used it in Sonic Adventure 2. Because you said it's a thematic thing, but meanwhile in the game it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna both go super for this to face the bio lizard, right? And then you're just like, and then so it's like I love the thematic theming that they decided to utilize the popular song Live and Learn for this thematic themes through that's been showcased throughout movie 3, and being able to do that, I think it just is a lot more effective than the way they did it in the games, because obviously Live and Learn just sounds more like it's an epic song that's like, yeah, we're gonna go face the bio lizard. This one, it's like it's more like it's emotional buildup. They have this conversation in resolving the conflict. They have like this insightful thing about how to move on and deal with grief. Like, I think that was more effective than what Sonic Adventure 2 did. Now that we know how the differences in the adaptation now that movie 3 came out, it's very beautiful storytelling.
It is, and I definitely say like they don't just do it just because like, hey, remember this song from the game that you like that they finally did. It's just that they just earn it to deserve it. Which yes, I definitely agree with Cookie by saying at this point it's literally both Sonic and Shadow's theme, and the best genius like at the very beginning, like in the beginning of the movie where Maria plays the acoustic guitar, where obviously fans like saying, "Oh my gosh, it's Live and Learn." So in a way, in the movie iteration verse, which the game has never done this, so isn't that saying that Maria somewhat canonically wrote the lyrics for Live and Learn as Shadow's lullaby, and that becomes like the running theme for his arc? And I'm like, wow, that's such a nice detail that I did not expect coming from the very beginning to the epic moment, like literally at the very end where they have the climax. That's such a like nice detail, but also just a nice build-up from that very beginning where not only sounded nostalgic therapeutic from Maria's guitar, but also how it later on builds up to the final act. It's great. And it still continues throughout the final act where even Shadow himself tells Ivo by saying like, this is our last chance to do the right thing. Because Ivo and Shadow has been fooled into Gerald's like plans and basically just go against like each other when it comes to their enemies and being fooled by Gerald's like, cooperation with each other. But then when
Mhm.
Gerald's defeated and the fact that Ivo made his sacrifice, says goodbye to Stone, Shadow has that tear and remembers that even though the stars are gone from the memories we have of Maria, but his light is still shining, even though his stars are gone. And then the heartfelt moment when Tails literally sacrificed himself to save Sonic. And if you think about with all these characters, Ivo has been egotistical, like a selfish, mean guy that basically doesn't care about anyone else, but then evolves to like from being the villain to the hero to actually save the world just because he has that one person that actually cares about him. Shadow being blind by rage, even though he got angry against the world and got angry against Sonic and the team and fall into Gerald's traps just because his one and only friend was taken away from him. But he doesn't forget like what Maria inspires Shadow to be like. You could be whatever you want to be, and this is your home, Shadow. Earth, you must save it and protect it, which is kind of like a homage to SA2, but done thematically. But when Tails was actually like falling down, and then when Knuckles, if you look back at Sonic 2, where Knuckles felt alone, Sonic was alone, Tails was alone, Shadow and Ivo, they're all isolated loners. But when
Mhm.
Knuckles made that vow by the end of Sonic 2, and then building up to Sonic 3, where his one and only friends, his one and only family is literally there. And then once when Knuckles saved, like in my head, I'm just like, not only they play the movie Sonic theme that goes da na 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 na, literally not only tears shedding from my eye from a longtime fan, it just proves like how much the filmmakers cares about these characters from these isolated loners that went through all their own personal struggles. Like obviously keep them as faithful as you enjoy from the games and make them stand out on their own. But throughout the series of like what you like about these characters from the games and actually make these arcs, like these motives, these inner flaws that these characters have had in the movies for what Shao's gone through, Sonic and his gang, Ivo's self. And then at the end where Ivan and Shadow make their sacrifices. Sonic apologizes for like being reckless and not being looking out just for his friends and looking out for Tails and Knuckles as they hug it out. It's just more like in my head, I'm like, I love this franchise. And I love how these
Mhm.
filmmakers have done with these characters, and it's like, we've come a long way. And what we're witnessing is with so much care, love, and passion, just like how we would appreciate it too.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. Yeah, you worded it very beautifully there, Daniel. Like, it's absolutely
Thanks.
true. And looks like we have room for one more question. Andrew, I'll let you ask your last question.
oh, last question. Oh, which one to pick?
Yeah,
Um,
make it a good one. Take one, Timmy.
oh gosh, the pressure is on. Um,
Ticking bomb.
let's go for what's some of your favorite Eggman moments from the Sonic series?
Favorite Eggman
Oh.
moments from the Sonic series. So if I okay, I'm just gonna go ramble on multiple iterations. So definitely from the iconic one from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is easily snooping as usual. I see, which I think that's pretty hilarious. Or one moment where he's trying to do like a orchestra music where he's kind of like singing there's a song like this, where his butt cheeks are like too distracting in front of the screen, which I thought that was pretty hilarious. And then flash forward to Sonic X, which of course it's an iconic meme-worthy moment where he literally grabs a banana by saying, "I was taking a bite of this delicious banana." Like it was just so out of context of how Mike delivered the line, but also the animation of how the way it looks like when he was about to get eaten, which I thought that was hilarious. And then with Sonic Boom, of course, there's so many to name of. But if I had to think one episode where he decides to become a roommate to Sonic and the characters, and he's just his voice like often changed where it sounds more soft where he's washing the dish where he goes, scrubbing your body so, scrubbing all the dishes. And then he purposely makes Sonic and Tails get tired on purpose of being that annoying roommate where he just snores where he goes and then literally just do like a pillow fight just to make them feel exhausted by saying, "Yeah, I like that in Sonic Boom." He's kind of like Plankton from SpongeBob in a way where he's enemies, but he's also neutral, where it's not like, I don't hate you all the time. Let's just like, be casual and be cool for once. And I feel like moments like that are pretty hilarious for Sonic Boom. And there's like one where he's kind of like dusting his lap by saying, like, "It warms my sturdy heart." I'm like, wait, where's my particle accelerator? And I just think like whenever he tries to bring it to like a musical number, it actually shows a little bit more of his soft side. Or at some moments where he screams like a monkey, or in this case, like a one where he goes like multiple times. That's kind of like a running gag in the show because you just don't expect him to scream like that. And then flash forward to the movie iteration of Jim Carrey. I mean, where do I begin? So from the first movie, clearly, there's a couple of segments I like from the first film. One of them is definitely his talk, his conversation with Tom. And yes, it's an iconic line that most people know where he goes, "I surpassed everything you're ever going to do." Before I was a toddler, I was spitting up formula while you're still spitting up formula. And then Tom talks about, feeding formula from his mother. And then he responds, "Nice. Rub that in my orphan face." It's funny, but also that small line by saying, like, oh, he definitely did not have any parents at all. And of course, the evil grow scene is pretty iconic and hilarious. And the Mushroom Planet sequence where Jim is sounding more like Game Eggman, where he goes, "Do some rock reconnaissance! Rock reconnaissance! Come on, that's hilarious! What's the matter with you?" In my brain, I was like, see, guys, I told you he was the perfect casting choice for this. And then flash forward to the second film. There's a couple of scenes I did like. I think there's one by particular where him and Knuckles were having this Indiana Jones labyrinth zone where the escaper goes, "I don't want to die like this. It's derivative. Make room for daddy." And then there was like a little innuendo joke where he predicts by saying, "There's a booby trap in every 7 seconds." And then when the axe went right through, I know what he was going to say, but it's a PG-rated movie, so you gotta mention it to something else. "So glad that didn't cut off my mustache." I'm like, all right, Jim, I see what you did there. And in the final act in the Death Egg sequence where he becomes Grim, like, okay, Jim, I get that Green is your favorite character where you play the Mask, the Grinch, and the Riddler from Batman Forever. But literally when he was doing like this is a thing that Jim Carrey usually does for fun, where he plays a guitar out of his leg and he just plays World Domination Playlist. I did not know the song was Pantera from Walk, and I noticed, I'm like, wait, if Jim was the one that requested the song, that reminds me in the first Ace Ventura movie where he requested Cannibal Corpse, like literally the scene where Ace is like, "Excuse me, it's Greg here, thank you," and then you have this heavy metal band in that film, and then Jim actually used that music choice for Sonic 2 for his Death Egg Robot dance a little bit at the end, and then one of the things I also like at the very end is where you get to this one sequence, like literally where Jim's Robotnik is like not only on the Death Egg robot, like literally when Sonic used the missile to take down when Agent Stone was knocked unconscious. I like that Robotnik's like, oh great. Next thing you know, there's going to be a report about hostile work environments, which that kind of caught me off guard because there's like three, CGI creatures in the middle of the zone. I thought that was funny. But then we go on to the third movie, which, yes, I mean, given the fact that he plays both characters, both Ivo and Gerald, I mean, easily one of my favorite lines. There's like two moments, like it's literally in their introduction scene, and I will be honest with you, I kind of predicted this joke before because I actually made a cosplay video where I cosplay both characters with the green screen because I do this for every Sonic movie, just use green screen, recreate scenes of the movie, but also kind of do my own twist with it. I knew there was going to be a self break the fourth wall joke about Jim Carrey's work where literally saying at the same time, we're two characters in a movie being played by the same actor. I'm like, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. And then another line that I did predict ever since I saw the trailers and the promos were afterwards Sonic was like, there's two Eggman now, and where Ivo says, double your villains, double your fun. And I'm like, I knew exactly what Gerald's gonna say, even before I saw the movie where he says, two Robotniks are way worse than one. Chest bump? No. And then the one things I also like, there's this one line that Jim wanted since Sonic 1 and 2, where he want his character to say the longest word in the English dictionary, where Ivo and Gerald are trying to like debate one another to like, let me test, is your IQ knowledge as big as me? And where they both said at the same time, where he goes, with all the marbles, good, I lost mine, a rare lung disease, and the longest word in the English dictionary, numeral ultra microscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. And funny enough, like not only I remember Jim wanted to add that word just because it actually works for the character's like high level sense of IQ, but I'm like, no joke. I literally had to look up by saying, how do you say the longest word in the English dictionary, which is basically a rare lung disease, and I break it down into different syllables. Pneumono ultra microscopic silicovolcanoconiosis, and then say it 5 times. Numeral ultra microscopic. Okay, I can't even say the word. Numeral ultra microscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. So I'm like, there you go, Jim. You actually taught me a new word to pronounce. And one of my favorite moments, like literally during the final act fights, when literally when they pull off each other's mustaches, where this joke got me off guard in the fight sequence where Ivo was like, when Jero has a CGI nano fist, where Ivo's like, oh, a nano fist. I haven't seen that since I hate watched Green Lantern in 2011. And then Jero responds with, I was saving it for Comic Con, but now there won't be a Comic Con. And I was like, I was not expecting Jim to mention Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern movie and mention Comic Con at the same time. Like, look, I get that the man is in his 60s, but I will be honest, as a cosplayer, but also for someone that gets the context of those jokes by saying, you know what? I don't care if someone calls it cringe. I honestly find those jokes unexpectedly funny because I just didn't expect that from that sequence. I'm like, yeah, this is why I just love this man's work. So out of all the Eggman iterations from Adventure Sonic the Hedgehog to Sonic 3, there you go. That's my compilation of fan favorite Eggman moments.
Nice.
Amazing.
So much to say.
Nice. And unfortunately, we will have to end this Q&A, but I want to thank you, Daniel, for taking the time um for making your own content to be to do this Q&A. It was a lot of fun hearing about your insights, about voice acting and also about, of course, like Eggman in
Mm-hmm.
specific. It was
Because
a
I am
lot
the
of fun.
Eggman. That's what I am. I sell tickets on the Ed Eggman hype train.
And of course, I want to give a shout out to my co-host Andrew HVA here.
Hey, you're
Woo!
welcome.
Out to Andy from the UK that does a good Tom Hanks impression.
Oh, thank you.
Very spot on.
Yeah, and of course, I am going to announce what's coming up next in live streams. This Friday, I have posted on my socials, but I am going to announce it here this Friday, August 8th at 9 a.m. PT at 12 p.m. ET. What? Super way earlier than usual. But it is for a good reason because it is another Goddess Spotlight with LSR, episode 37. And it is a Q&A with none other than the famous singer from Crush 40, Johnny Joelli.
Yeah.
Woo!
Living there, my
So,
dudes.
yeah, so please tune in for that Q&A if you want to ask Johnny your questions. Here's your chance. I know it's earlier on my end, but it's for a good reason. And of course, this Q&A is a post SDCC exclusive interview. So if you want to tune in for that, I know it's earlier than my usual Q&As. But but my co-host for that will be Kevin, and we will be doing that Q&A. Then this coming Monday, August 11th at 4 p.m. PT, 7 p.m. ET, is another episode of Goddess Spotlight with LSR, episode 38, where Chris here will be my co-host, and we will be doing a Q&A with Mariah Angeline, the voice of Maria Robotnik in Sonic Adventure and Adventure 2 Battle. So if you want to ask her a question as well, you please be sure to tune in for that. And an and the upcoming live stream is another Team Serenity live stream, which of course Andrew here is a part of, which we are going to be reviewing K-pop Demon Hunters. Yeah, the critically acclaimed Netflix animated movie just like exploded pretty much. And I think you could say Doom and Andrew waited until I watched it, and then we are actually going to do our honest review on it. And that will be on August 19th at 5 p.m. PT, 8 p.m. AT. So be sure to tune in for these upcoming live streams. And of course, be on the lookout for upcoming Twitter spaces. And of course, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on that bell notification for upcoming live streams and video content coming soon to my YouTube channel. And may you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you all for tuning in. Bye, everyone.
Let's just say my outros. It's been a real drag. Thanks for nothing. In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.